Don't drop any paper.
I have no paper to drop. I want to thank Rich for those kind words. I'm here for many reasons tonight, here in Atlanta, from Washington, D.C. First, true, Richard and Kay Greenstein, friends of Rich, a friend for over 50 years, and Kay, a friend for over 30 years. And Michael Horowitz and others, very effective in getting me here. You know, Rich Greenstein will introduce you if you come here. Kay will even attend, you know. So that's one reason I'm here, to say hello to old friends. Second, I'm here, you heard about Dee Feinberg. You try saying no to Dee Feinberg. Dee Feinberg says, come to the Atlanta Federation, you come to the Atlanta Federation. And Dee's here watching. I know of nobody in this country who's given more to Jewish causes and Federation than my wife. And the third reason I'm here, Michael and Barbara Horowitz. I go around the country and occasionally speak at federations or meet leaders of the Jewish community. Michael Horowitz's name comes up over and over again, and anytime, any chance I have to be in an event where Michael Horowitz is part of it, I try and be here, and to be able to go around the country now and say, yes, I saw Michael and Barbara, they're fine. So that's the third reason I'm here. And the final reason I'm here is it's a small world. And wherever I go in my work, or for Federation, I meet people from Brockton, Massachusetts, my hometown. Melissa Miller from Brockton, Jan Singer from Brockton. We've taken the selfies. It's already gone back to Brockton. And that's another reason I'm here. So for all of those reasons, and especially the last reason, which I will explain in a minute, is a particular reason why I'm glad to be here this evening, to talk for a few minutes and hopefully take some questions as well. Now, you've heard Rich in his introduction, and you hear all the time about I do work to give people hope. I'm a little bit dubious about that. I don't mind the title tonight, but be careful about using me as an example for providing people in grief with hope. I don't really think that's true. All I can do is give people financial security, some certainty after tragedy that they will be financially protected. But hope, after you've lost husbands, wives, brothers, sisters, children, hope, I think, oversells what I do, I must say. Now I think this is a pretty sophisticated crowd, and I think you have some understanding of how I get involved in these horrors. Every once in a while in American life, not often, there is a tragedy. And the tragedy so galvanizes the American people that they want to do something special for the victims. They want to reach out and demonstrate their resolve, their sense of community to help the victims. 13 days after 9/11, Congress passed a law. And the law simply said, anybody who would rather come into a special compensation fund, funded entirely by the taxpayer, not the airlines, not the World Trade Center, public money, you can do so. You don't have to. You can go and litigate against the airlines or Boeing or the World Trade Center or the security guard companies, etc. But if you'd rather get some quick, generous compensation, you can come into a very special program that will be designed and administered by Ken Feinberg. Well, 97% of all the families that lost a loved one on 9/11, the airplanes, the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, came into the program. $7.1 billion went out. The average taxpayer-funded award for a death claim, over $2 million, tax-free. A physical injury, $400,000, tax-free. I will not sue. Here's your check. After the BP oil spill in the Gulf, BP walked into the White House with President Obama. They walked out and announced, without any trial, without any finding of liability, we will front $20 billion to pay not only deaths and injuries on the rig that exploded, but anybody in the Gulf who lost business, income, compensation, wages, as a result of the oil spill. Fishermen, hotels on the beach, oyster harvesters, shrimpers. Over 16 months, the President asked me to administer the program. Over 16 months, we paid out $6.5 billion to 220,000 businesses and individuals. After Congress railed against General Motors for this ignition switch problem on cobalts, GM set up a program. We will ask Ken Feinberg to pay any family that lost a loved one in an automobile accident because of the switch, or anybody who survived an accident with physical injuries. And over a year, we paid out there about $600 million. You know, it's very interesting. I've become a nationally recognized philanthropist with other people's money. It's a very interesting gig, actually, in a way. But these programs, now after the Boston Marathon, Mayor Menino in Boston announced One Fund Boston. We set up a program. In 60 days, $61 million came in from 100,000 private donations from around the country, individuals and businesses. We paid that money out, $61 million. It worked. It worked. Now, these programs are exceedingly rare. They do not happen very often. They do not. They raise all sorts of public policy issues when you set up these funds. 9/11, absolutely, I think that compensation program was absolutely the right thing to do. Congress set it up, we implemented it, we paid out the money, we did exactly what Congress wanted, and I think it was exactly the right thing to do. Don't ever do it again. Don't ever do it again. Bad things happen to good people every day in this country. You don't have a 9/11 fund with taxpayer money benefiting only these folks. Everybody else fend for yourself. But for you victims of 9/11 and your families, the taxpayer, the American people will fund it. Now, I think it was a good thing to do, but it's a very close question. You should have read some of the emails I got during the 9/11 fund. Dear Mr. Feinberg, my son died in Oklahoma City. Where's my check? Dear Mr. Feinberg, I don't get it. My daughter died in the basement of the World Trade Center in the original 1993 attacks committed by the very same type of people. Where's my money? And it wasn't just terrorism. Dear Mr. Feinberg, I don't get it. Last year, my wife saved 3 little girls from drowning in the Mississippi River, and then she drowned a heroine. Where's my check? You better be careful in America when you set up a special program. Everybody else, sorry, you're not included. That's not the American way. Now, in 9/11, I can argue, I think effectively, that it was sound public policy. It was a unique response to an unprecedented tragedy, rivaled only by the American Civil War, Pearl Harbor, and the assassination of President Kennedy. But I must say, it rings pretty hollow when you have to explain to a mother why her daughter, who died in the World Trade Center, isn't eligible to receive public compensation. Whatever excuse I make doesn't sit well. So that's a problem with 9/11. Now BP, it's a similar problem in a way. Now that's all BP's money, the oil spill. But you still get letters. Dear Mr. Feinberg, I've been waiting for 20 years, a victim of the Exxon Valdez oil spill. Why don't I have any money under this program? Well, BP's the one funding it, and it only covers BP claims. Now with BP in the Gulf, we had a different problem. I received in 16 months 1,200,000 claims. I got 100 claims from Georgia. I didn't know the oil had got to Georgia. Over 100 claims from Georgia. Quite a few from within a 10-block radius of some bar in downtown Atlanta. But we got about over 100 claims in Georgia. Now the problem in the BP oil spill was proof. Mr. Feinberg, I'm a fisherman. I lost $100,000 because they closed the fishing grounds in the Gulf. Well, how do I know it's $100,000? Do you have a tax return? No. We do things with a handshake down here. Well, I can't pay you in a handshake. So how do I know you lost $100,000? Well, he shuffled some papers and he shows me some corporate profit and loss statements written in crayon. All right, I'll send you a check for $100,000. Now with it, I'm sending you a 1099 from the IRS. You are? Yes. I waive it. You can't waive a 1099. I've got to send you the 1099. You can't waive. You're going to send me that. Yep. Rip up my claim. Rip it up. Probably never paid taxes in his life. So we ripped up the claim, $100,000. No, I don't want it. So that was a big problem in BP. General Motors. We paid out over $600 million. Problem with the General Motors compensation was the automobile accidents occurred so long ago, we didn't have the car to look at, to examine, or the black box data to see whether or not it was the ignition switch that failed. So we had to look at circumstantial evidence, photographs of the accident. Did the airbag deploy? If the airbag didn't deploy, the power might have been off. If the power's off, it might be the switch. Maintenance records, police reports, a problem. Now, in all of these cases, I'm asked all the time, what's the toughest job, part of the job? Is it designing the program? No. What I do is not rocket science. People in this audience could do what I do. You could draft these programs. It's not difficult to do that. Is it tough to calculate awards? No. If you have an adding machine, a calculator, you can add up the money. It really doesn't take, it's not that difficult. I'll tell you what's difficult. What's difficult in all of these programs, what is actually quite debilitating, is the emotion. It's meeting with individual victims and their families. And the stories you hear, one-on-one, behind closed doors, chilling. Absolutely chilling. That you get through this with great difficulty. Mr. Feinberg, I lost my husband. He was a fireman, and he died in the World Trade Center on 9/11. And I understand from your program, I'm going to get about $2 million. Well, I have two children, 6 and 4. I want that money in 30 days. Well, Mrs. Jones, this is public money. I've got to go to the Treasury. They've got to do their due diligence. Why do you need the money in 30 days? Why? I'll tell you why, Mr. Feinberg. I have terminal cancer. I have 10 weeks to live. My husband was going to survive me and take care of our 2 little ones. They're going to now be orphans. I have got to get this money quickly and set up a program, a trust, to protect my children, because in a few weeks I'm gone. Well, we went down to Treasury, we accelerated the money. 8 weeks later, she died. And we got the money to her in time. Now, there's nothing you do to prepare you for this, you see, when you hear stories like this. Mr. Feinberg, I lost my husband. He was a fireman, and he died at the World Trade Center. When the plane hit the building, he was in the World Trade Center and he helped people escape. He got people safely across the street. He saw that there were a few other people trapped in the World Trade Center lobby, so he went back in, rescued those people, and brought them to safety. While he was running across the World Trade Center plaza, he was killed when somebody jumped from the 103rd floor and hit him. If he had taken one step either way, he would have survived. But somebody hit him and they both died. Mr. Feinberg, there is no God. No God could allow this to happen. Those are the types of stories. Now, just when you think you've heard everything, somebody comes in to see me and just poses a problem. How do you deal with something like this? Where do you learn in law books or any type, a law degree? A law degree doesn't help you very much, you see. A divinity degree, maybe, or a degree in psychiatry. Mr. Feinberg, I lost my husband at the World Trade Center. He was Mr. Mom. Every day that he wasn't at the firehouse as a fireman, he was home teaching our 6-year-old how to play baseball, teaching our 4-year-old how to read, reading a bedtime story to our 2-year-old. What a cook! Mr. Feinberg, he was Mr. Mom. He cooked all our meals. He was the gardener around the house. He planted the flowers and the bushes. Mr. Feinberg, my life without Mr. Mom, my husband, my life is over. The only reason I haven't jumped out a window to join him is our 3 children. But my life, I don't care what you give me, my life is over. She leaves. The next day, I get a telephone call from a lawyer in Queens. Mr. Feinberg, did you meet yesterday with the lady with the 3 kids, 6, 4, and 2, Mr. Mom? Yeah, I did. Very, very tragic. Very terrible. Now look, Mr. Feinberg, you got a tough job. I don't envy what you have to do. It's not easy. But I got to tell you, Mr. Feinberg, you don't know that Mr. Mom has 2 other children by his girlfriend in Queens, 5 and 3. Now, I'm telling you this because I represent the girlfriend. And when you cut your check from the 9/11 fund, there's not 3 surviving children, there's 5 surviving children. But I'm sure you'll do the right thing. Click, he hangs up. I mean, you know. Do you tell her? Do you tell her about the 2 other children and the fact that her Mr. Mom is leading a double life in Queens? Or do you keep your mouth shut? See? That's what keeps you up at 3 a.m., not designing some legal program. What do you tell people? What should you do? What does Dee Dee Feinberg think? Right? I didn't tell Although we went around and around, my staff, we thought long and hard about this. Not my place. She has a memory of her husband. Who am I? A bureaucrat getting money out the door. Not my role. We cut one check to her as the mother of the 3 children, and we cut a separate check without her knowledge to the girlfriend as the guardian of the 2 children. Now that was over 12 years ago. I'll bet you they all know by now, but wouldn't do it, you see. Now nothing you do trains you for this. Nothing. And every time I do one of these programs, guaranteed, I'll make a horrible blunder. I'll never forget the blunder of all blunders. Well-intentioned. I didn't mean to make a mistake. An 83-year-old man came to see me after 9/11 in Washington, crying, tears streaming down his face. Mr. Feinberg, I lost my son at the Pentagon. When the plane hit, he escaped from the Pentagon. But he thought his sister, who also worked there, was trapped. So he went back into the Pentagon, the burning building, to look for his sister. His sister had escaped from a side door. He died looking for her. Mr. Feinberg, I want you to know a father should never bury a son. My life is over. I'm just going through the motions with my son gone. And I looked at this elderly gentleman, and I said to him at the time, Mr. Jones, this is terrible. I know how you feel. He looks at me, very nice man. He says, Mr. Feinberg, you have a very difficult job, but I have some advice for you. Don't ever tell somebody like me that you know how I feel. You have no idea how I feel, and it's a little bit pretentious and condescending. I know you mean well. Don't ever do that again. Well, I'll never do that again. You learn in dealing with people, in grief, silence. Be a good listener. There is very little you can say. People never come to me after tragedy to talk about money. Never. They come for 2 reasons. To vent about life's unfairness. Mr. Feinberg, why my son, a 19-year-old kid driving a GM car, why is he dead? There is no God. My son never hurt anybody. He gets in an automobile and we don't even know the defect, and now he's gone from my life. Empty, hollow life now I've got. Where is the justice that allows that to happen? Or people come to see me to validate the memory of a lost loved one. Mr. Feinberg, I lost my wife at the World Trade Center. We were married for 25 years. Now I have a hearing with you. I'd like to show you a video of our marriage 25 years ago. I want you to see what an angel she was. Mr. Jones, you don't have to show me that video. It'll be very, very emotional, and you're going to watch. I want you to see what those murderers did to my angel. Play the video. In the 9/11 fund, my office was filled with memorabilia. Ribbons, medals, diplomas, videotapes, audio tapes, teddy bears, green cards. You have no idea. Diplomas, certificates of good conduct, medals filled my office with people who would come to see me to validate memory. Now, I want to make 2 final points and then take a few questions. First, you have some idea why I'd be very, very careful about over-promising by saying that what I do is I'm involved in the business of hope. I don't buy that, you see. It's all right for a marketing, I like the title. Money is a very poor substitute for loss. I tell my colleagues who help me in these programs, when we get a new assignment, brace yourself. Do not ever expect anybody to say thank you, or to show gratitude or appreciation. Why should they? Here's a check for your lost loved one, and you expect thank you? Don't ever use the word justice in what I do. There is no justice here. This is all about mercy, not justice. There is no justice. A check. During the Boston Marathon, I went over to the hospital to visit a man who wanted to see me, who had his left leg blown off following the marathon bombings. And I walk into his hospital room, and there he is lying in bed with a stump. His left leg's gone. And on his chest is his 9-year-old son. And around the hospital bed, his wife, his mother, his brother. I'm in for trouble. Mr. Jones, I'm here to tell you that One Fund Boston is a terrible tragedy. I'm sorry. And I'm here to tell you that you will receive a check for $1,125,000 tax-free for the loss of your leg. Is that right, Mr. Feinberg? I got a better idea. Keep the money. Give me my leg back. How's that? Give me my leg back. You can have the money. Mr. Jones, I wish I had that power. All I can do is give you money. I can't get your leg back. Yeah, great. Isn't that great? Well, I got out of there as fast as I could. What can you say? What can possibly be told, you see? So the first thing you learn in this business, the business of hope, it's the business of providing some financial security to people as a demonstration of the community's desire to empathize and to provide some assistance and support the only way the community can really. Money. Compensation. One less thing, perhaps, for the victim or his or her family to worry about. The second thing you learn in what I do, I've learned, is how I've been helped by my Jewish faith. Now you might say, how so? Well, I'll tell you. One thing I've learned from my faith and my study of Judaism is how the Jewish people respond collectively to grief. It is tremendously helpful to me to observe Jewish ritual when it comes to tragedy, death, serious injury. The community rallies around the individual victim and their families. The Shiva, the graveside service, guarding the body the night before burial. This is a community-wide response to individual grief. No grieving Jew grieves alone. The community is there for them. And it is an integral, important part of Jewish liturgy and the Jewish ritual. And I've watched over the years, too many times, how Jews rally around families that grieve so they don't grieve alone. And in the work that I do, I must say, it is the greater American community that rallies around the victim or the family or the grieving parents or the grieving relatives. Jews are there for their fellow Jews. And in program after program that I work on, the community rallies around the victims, and I must say in all of these programs that I'm involved in, the community rallies around me What I do is very apolitical. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it's Republicans, Democrats, liberals, conservatives, red state, blue state. I find that when I get involved in these programs, everybody is supportive. I would have thought after 9/11 that I would have had to hide on Mars in giving out money and the difficulties and the emotion. It turns out to this day, I will walk down an airport lobby and people will come up to me and I'm getting ready to duck. Mr. Feinberg, didn't you do 9? Yeah, thank you so much for what you did for all of us, blah, blah. And that's very reinforcing, you see. Now, one final point I do want to make. I'm asked to come down to Atlanta. I'm asked to spend a few minutes with you to talk about my work, to say a few words, help the crowd come together. I'm glad to do that. But I must say, I take particular satisfaction in being asked to speak at a Federation event. These programs that I design and administer, like 9/11 or BP or GM or One Fund Boston, I roll in, I do the job, I roll out, a few months, a year, it's done, close the file, I'm done with it, I go back, I write a book, I do other things, and there we are. Not Federation. No. Federation 24/7, 365 days a year. No public acclaim, quiet, out of the spotlight. What Federation in Atlanta and everywhere else, what federations do every day, day in, day out. No public fare, no one knows. It's done quietly, it's done effectively. Here's the money, use it wisely. I must say, I marvel at the professionals and the supporters, the donors, who breathe life into what Federation is supposed to do. So when I'm asked to speak around the country, I turn down, I just don't have time. So I have to turn down almost 90% of the speaking invitations that I receive. Never do I try, at least, I try never to turn down a Federation invitation. Because I'm dealing with people who I think understand better than most the turmoil that you go through in providing assistance to people. And I am so honored to be invited to speak at a Federation gathering where we're in an organization which every day does what I do, only better and more quietly and very effectively, 24/7. So I thank Michael, I thank the Greensteins, of course, I thank everybody associated with Atlanta Federation, not only for inviting me, but also for the work that you do. And I want you all to know that I'm pretty sure when I go home tonight, I'll get a slap in the back from Dee Feinberg, which is worth more than you can imagine. So thank you very much.
If you have a question, raise your hand. Mike Malvin or I will come find you. Ken is here to answer any questions you might have. Okay?
Once you began giving out money for deaths and losing a leg, etc., the first time around, are you stuck with those figures for the rest of, for all the other programs?
No. Am I stuck with the figures? How do we compensate? Very simple. People here understand this. How do you decide how much money to give out? Well, how much money do you have? I mean, if you've got $61 million at One Fund Boston, you can give out money a certain way. If you've only got $5 million in Aurora, Colorado, or $8 million at Virginia Tech, you give money out a different way. So the template is similar. for a lot of these programs. But the numbers that you plug in are tied directly to my first question anytime the president or the governor or a congressman or anybody asks me, will you do this? Yeah, I'll do this. How much money do we have? 9/11 was taxpayer money, open-ended. Spend as much as you need. Well, that's a good program. One Fund Boston, BP, really you have as much money as you need. But when you get down to the money with a cap, we only have 5 million, 4 million, 8 million. You got to think long and hard. How much for the dead? How much for the physically injured? Do we have enough money for those who survive but can't get out of bed? They're so depressed. Depends on the money.
Hi,
Yes,
question for you.
a lawyer. You can't, a lawyer.
This is not a lawyer.
Okay.
Does doing what you do bring you closer to your religion, and this may be too personal, or does it push you away? I understand the people you're dealing with, how can you believe in God? I'm just curious whether you find comfort in your religion, whether it pushes you away, or how it impacts how you relate.
I think it's really a wash. I don't think it helps or hurts. I'll tell you what does help is my understanding of the Jewish ritual concerning grief and death. That's a plus. But in terms of my psychic well-being, I must say, I don't think it helps. Sometimes depending on who I'm talking with, I even begin to be a skeptic a little bit about higher forces impacting decisions like this. But I tend to come to my senses. Now, I must say after 9/11, I went to talk to rabbis. I said, rabbis, where in great Jewish books of learning do you find answers to these horrible problems of life and death? And I don't get very satisfactory answers. Either the rabbis talk in parables. Well, if a horse has a certain amount of grain and you have to distribute to certain people, you should give the grain to the needy. And the rabbi, please, I'm trying to run this program. Or I had one rabbi in Brookline, Massachusetts, who said to me, some horrors are unanswerable. Don't look to Jewish books of learning to try and get answers to 9/11. You won't find it. So that's sort of my answer. Few other questions? Yes, sir.
So you detailed some of the very unenviable parts of your job. When you're called upon each time, how do you muster the emotional courage to do this all over again?
Well, I got to tell you, when somebody calls and says, how do you muster the emotional courage? If it's President Bush or President Obama, you muster the courage. Ken, I want you to do this. Or you can't say, I'm busy. You can't do that. So, I mean, the mere fact that somebody is calling on you as a public citizen to serve the country, you muster the courage. The problem is not mustering the courage to begin the program. The problem is how do you maintain that courage during the course of meeting with grieving victim after grieving victim after grieving victim. Now that is a real debilitating problem. Now, I've got a wife and family that is very supportive. Do not underestimate that. I find in my own case, I'm refortified by apolitical consensus where the country is rallying really around you to help. That helps. Also, I find tremendous solace in music, classical music, opera, the height of civilization, when during the day you're dealing with the low point of civilization. How is it possible people can do this, and then at night, Mozart and Beethoven and all of this, it makes a huge difference. It sort of helps. So you muster the courage because you're not a soldier in Afghanistan, but you're asked to do a job. And it's not easy, but I think there are people in this audience that would do exactly what I would do what I do if President Obama called you, or President Bush called you, or Mayor Menino of Boston called you. You know, you're an American citizen. The other thing is, I get tremendous help from the fact that when I was growing up in Brockton, Massachusetts, when I was a teenager, Jan was in a crib, but when I was a teenager, the President of the United States was a fair-haired son of Massachusetts. And President Kennedy, I'll never forget, I'm a teenager, he said, look, serving the public interest is a noble undertaking. Every single individual can make a difference. Public service and government are not bad names. That stuck with me. Believe it or not, in 2017, we celebrate the 100th anniversary of the birth of President Kennedy, believe it or not. And I remember President Kennedy as if it was yesterday. And that's had a profound effect on me also, in accepting the challenge and doing it, because every person can make a difference. So that's secular, and it's also ritual religion in terms of grief. And there's the sort of the moral underpinnings of what I do. Let's take one more question. Right, here's the last question.
So in addition to compensating the victims in terms of financial reparation, what else are you doing, or what do you think you can do in the role that you have to impact the situation?
Well, right now we're finishing the GM ignition switch program. The final report just was released the other day. We'll be done with that by the end of the year, or maybe the end of January at the latest. And then, we'll see what I do. I tell you, I get the chills every day I pick up a newspaper. You don't know what you're going to read. They'll want to fund the San Bernardino, the terrorist attack. I'm sure they're going to probably set up some program. I'll get a call. Will I help at least design the program? So, I'm working right now as a special employee at the United States Treasury Department. We're trying to deal with pension reform, a horrible problem in this country. So there's plenty to keep me busy. Again, my thanks to the Greensteins and Michael. And my thanks to the Atlanta Federation for inviting me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Feinberg. It's truly inspirational, and I really loved what you said about the emotion in the work that you do, and also a special thank you to Amanda for your personal story. Have a great evening and a very happy New Year. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.